It begins with a sound. A sound that doesn't belong. On a street like any other in America, a quiet, working-class stretch of peeling paint and chain-link fences, a sound slices through the mundane drone of a Monday afternoon. It's May 6th, 2013. Seymour Avenue, Cleveland. A man named Angel Cordero is on his porch, and he hears it. A scream. Not a playful shriek, not an angry shout. This is a sound ripped from the very soul of a person. A sound of pure, desperate terror. He looks across the street, towards number 2207. The house is unassuming, a little run down. The man who lives there, Ariel Castro, is a familiar face. A former school bus driver, a musician who plays bass in local bands. A guy you'd nod to. But the sound comes again. Frantic. A woman is at the front door, half visible through the glass, fighting it, pushing against it, screaming for help. Another neighbor, Charles Ramsey, is eating his dinner. He hears it too. He thinks it's a domestic dispute and cautiously strolls over. Through the door, he sees her. "I'm stuck in here," she's yelling. "I've been in here a long time." Time stretches. For a moment, it's just confusion. But then she says the words. The impossible words that will tear a hole in the reality of this quiet street and expose a decade of darkness lurking just feet from where children played and neighbors grilled their dinner. She says, "I'm Amanda Berry. I've been kidnapped." And then she adds the sentence that stops Charles Ramsey's heart. "I've been missing for 10 years. This isn't just a story about a crime. It's about the space between what we see and what is real. It's about a monster hiding in plain sight. But more than that, it is the story of an unbreakable human will, a testament that even in a decade of absolute darkness, 3 women could forge a bond of survival so powerful it would ultimately shatter the walls of their prison. This is not a story about how they were lost. It's about how they were found. To understand the house on Seymour Avenue, you must first understand the man who built its cage. Ariel Castro was a phantom living amongst the real. To the outside world, he was unremarkable. He drove children to school. He played bass with a casual charm. But behind the closed doors of his own life, a different man festered. His ex-wife, Grimilda Figueroa, had tried to warn the world. She filed police reports detailing horrific abuse. He had, she said, broken her nose, dislocated her shoulder, and locked her in the house. In a 2005 court document, she wrote, "He has threatened to abduct my daughters. He will not stop until he has." The warnings were there, filed away in manila folders, dismissed as the bitter fallout of a messy divorce. The system saw a domestic dispute. It failed to see the blueprint for a predator. Castro was a creature of routine and control. And in 2002, his private malignancy metastasized. It found its first victim. Her name was Michelle Knight. 21 years old, a young woman navigating the messy edges of life. She had a young son, but had lost custody. On August 22, 2002, she was walking to a court hearing to try and get him back when she saw a familiar face. It was the father of a girl she knew from school, Ariel Castro. He pulled up, friendly, smiling. He told her he had a puppy for her son. It was such a simple, disarming lie, a symbol of innocence used as bait for an act of pure evil. Michelle, wanting to do something nice for her boy, got in the car. It was a decision that would cost her the next 11 years of her life. He drove her to 2207 Seymour Avenue. The moment she stepped inside, the mask dissolved. The door locked behind her. He led her upstairs into a room, and then came the chains. Imagine the cold, metallic weight, the sharp clink echoing in a silent room. He bound her, attaching the chains to a pipe in the wall. The world Michelle Knight knew vanished. It was replaced by 4 walls, a ceiling, a floor, and the suffocating presence of her captor. For nearly a year, she was alone. He starved her, beat her, and subjected her to unspeakable psychological torture. He was her god, a cruel and capricious one. And 2207 Seymour Avenue was his church of pain.
Almost exactly 8 months later, on April 21st, 2003, Amanda Berry was finishing her shift at a Burger King. It was the day before her 17th birthday. The ride she accepted was from Ariel Castro. Again, the lie was simple. He was the father of her schoolmate, Arlene. He told Amanda that Arlene was at his house. It seemed safe, plausible. The moment she walked into the house, the script repeated itself. The locked door, the sudden, terrifying transformation. He led her upstairs, and there, in a separate room, she saw her future. Chains, a lock, the cold finality of a prison. For Michelle, Amanda's arrival was a complex cataclysm. It was the horror of seeing another girl fall into the same trap, but it was also the end of her complete isolation. There was another human being breathing under the same roof, a silent witness. A year later, the twisted collection grew. On April 2nd, 2004, Gina DeJesus, just 14 years old, was walking home from school with her best friend, Arlene Castro, Ariel Castro's daughter. They parted ways, and Gina started the short walk to her own house. She never made it. Castro was waiting. He offered her a ride. She knew him. He was Arlene's dad. She got in the car. With Gina's abduction, the psychological architecture of the prison was complete. The disappearances of Amanda and Gina sparked massive citywide searches. Their faces were on posters, on the news, and all the while they were just miles away, hidden behind a flimsy door on a street where Castro's own daughter had played. The sheer audacity is breathtaking. Life inside the house settled into a horrifying rhythm, a decade-long monotony of terror. Castro's world ran on a set of brutal, unwritten laws. The first law was total sensory deprivation. The house was a fortress against the sun. Windows were boarded up from the inside, covered with thick plastic sheeting and heavy curtains nailed to the frames. It was a tomb, sealed from the world. The second law was psychological warfare. He would bring them one meal a day, often fast food, forcing them to share. He would test them, leaving a door slightly ajar to see if they would try to escape, a trap they knew would lead to a brutal beating. He celebrated the anniversaries of their abductions with a cake, a grotesque parody of a birthday, a celebration of their loss. He controlled information, forcing them to watch news reports about their own disappearances, to see their mothers weep on camera. It was a way of showing them how utterly dependent they were on him. And yet, in this bleak landscape, a silent sisterhood was forged. Stripped of everything, they learned to read Castro's moods, to warn each other with a glance, to offer what little comfort they could. Michelle, the first captive, became a kind of anchor. Amanda was resilient, her mind always looking for a crack in the wall. Gina, the youngest, was quiet and observant. They were a family born of shared trauma. Their most profound act of rebellion was secret and silent. On scraps of paper, they waged a war to remember. They kept diaries. These weren't just chronicles of abuse, they were lifelines. They were active attempts to hold on to the people they were before the house. My name is Gina de Jesus. My favorite color is pink. My mother's name is Barbara. I remember her smile. My name is Michelle Knight. I have a son. These weren't just lists, they were anchors to reality, a refusal to be erased. This bond was tested and forged in the most harrowing of circumstances. Over the years, Michelle became pregnant by Castro 5 times. Each time, he starved and beat her until she miscarried. It was a cycle of annihilation that nearly broke her. Then, on Christmas Day 2006, everything changed. Amanda Berry gave birth to a daughter. The birth was an act of terror and grace. Amanda went into labor in an inflatable kiddie pool. Castro, paranoid, threatened to kill her if the baby died, and he forced Michelle to be the midwife. Michelle, who had lost 5 of her own children in this house, had to deliver her captor's child. In that moment, facing an impossible choice, something shifted in her. When the newborn stopped breathing, it was Michelle who gave her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, breathing life into her. The baby's name was Jocelyn, and her presence cracked the foundation of Castro's prison. Jocelyn became the sun in a world without one. She was a reason to live, a focus for their love. For Amanda, she was a fierce, primal motivation to escape. For Michelle and Gina, she was a niece, a bright light in the suffocating gloom. Jocelyn's existence humanized the house in a way Castro couldn't control. She asked questions. She made noise. She was a small, unpredictable element in his perfectly controlled world. She was hope, embodied in a little girl who knew no other life than the one inside those 4 walls. She was the future. May 6th, 2013. For Michelle, it was day 3,909. For Amanda, day 3,668. For Gina, day 3,321. It was just another day. Castro left the house. But on this day, he made a mistake. A small one. He locked the outer storm door, but he forgot to lock the main interior door. Amanda Berry noticed it immediately. For 10 years, that door had been a dead end. Today, it wasn't. She had her daughter with her. The little girl was 6 years old. For 6 years, Amanda had been waiting for a chance, a single crack in the armor of their captivity. This was it. Fear and opportunity waged war inside her. But then she looked at her daughter. Jocelyn had never felt the sun on her face without her captor standing over her. The decision was made.
She ran to the front door. She couldn't open the locked storm door, but it was flimsy. She started screaming, pushing, kicking. She wedged her arm through a small gap and pushed with all her might. The aluminum bent. Her arm was free. It was this arm, waving frantically, and this scream, born of a decade of silence, that Angel Cordero and Charles Ramsey saw and heard. Ramsey, on the phone with 911, helps her kick out the bottom panel of the door. Amanda crawls through, clutching her daughter. She is free. The sun, the air, the sounds of the street, a sensory explosion. She grabs Ramsey's phone. The world hears her voice for the first time in 10 years. Thin, high-pitched, a voice stretched by panic and disbelief. "Help me. I'm Amanda Berry. I've been kidnapped, and I've been missing for 10 years, and I'm here. I'm free now." The 911 dispatcher asks her to wait, but Amanda is terrified Castro will return. "I need them now, before he gets back. He's Ariel Castro at 2207 Seymour."
And then she delivers the final bombshell. There's other girls in there. Gina de Jesus. Her voice breaks. Within minutes, the street is flooded. Police storm the house. They move through the darkened corridors, past the boarded-up windows and the elaborate locks. And upstairs, they find them. Gina de Jesus, now 23, and Michelle Knight, now 32. When an officer tells Michelle she is free, she flinches, conditioned by a decade of violence. It takes a moment for the reality to sink in. The nightmare was over. The city of Cleveland erupted in a wave of shock and overwhelming joy. The missing were home. Ariel Castro was arrested that same evening. He showed no remorse. In court, he pleaded guilty to 937 criminal counts, including murder for causing Michelle's miscarriages, to avoid the death penalty. At his sentencing, Michelle Knight was the only one to appear in person. She stood before him, small in stature, but radiating an impossible strength. She looked him in the eye. "I spent 11 years in hell," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "Now your hell is just beginning. I will overcome all this that has happened, but you will face hell for eternity. I will live on. You will die a little every day." He was sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years. The house on Seymour Avenue was demolished, erased from the earth. 1 month into his sentence, Ariel Castro was found dead in his prison cell. He had taken his own life. His death was not the end of the story. It was merely a footnote. The real story, the one that matters, is what happened next. It's the story of 3 women who walked out of a tomb and back into the light. How do you learn to live again after a decade was stolen? They did it, each in their own way. They refused to be defined by him. They were not the Castro victims. They are Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina de Jesus. Michelle Knight, who now goes by Lily Rose Lee, has become an author and a powerful advocate for the abused, her voice a beacon for others. Amanda Berry and Gina de Jesus co-wrote a book, Hope. Amanda now hosts a new segment in Cleveland dedicated to finding missing persons, turning her pain into a shield for others. And Jocelyn, the little girl born in captivity, is growing up surrounded by a loving family, free under the open sky. The story of 2207 Seymour is often told as the story of a monster, but to focus on him is to give him a power he no longer has. The true core of this story, the unforgettable, enduring truth, lies with the women. It's a story about the strength of a whispered conversation in a dark room. It's about the rebellion of writing your own name on a scrap of paper. It's about breathing life into a newborn when you are surrounded by death. It's about a single moment of courage at a front door. They were faced with an obstacle that is, for most of us, literally unthinkable, and they overcame it. They walked out of that house not as broken things, but as warriors. They proved that chains can restrain the body, but they cannot imprison the soul. Their survival was their victory. Their recovery is their masterpiece.